faves, I'm Chris.
I'm Vi.
And I'm Donato.
And welcome to Island Fever, where grown-ass Pacifica people do grown things. But this week is going to be a little less grown because we're going to talk about a family film, Lilo Stitch, the 2025 version, not the 2000. Was it 2002, 2003?
2002.
2002.
23 years ago.
How old were you, Donato?
Oh, I wasn't born yet. But I remember my ancestor, who is also named Donato, went to see it as a young kid at the Nu'uli Cinemas in American Samoa.
Oh, wow. So she's rich. Your ancestors were rich.
My ancestor could afford the $4.50 ticket, as well as the selengi for the bus, the pasikua, to go see it. And still have a little bit money left over to buy her sangwisi, her saimingi, and her apaingo.
Oh, this is feeling very Samoan-centric. I'm sure the non-Samoans are like, what is this shit? Like, give me a break. We're not going to beat the allegations. There's already 3 Samoans on the frickin'...
Yeah, but like one vivid memory, and I'll say this about the original version that I really appreciated seeing as a kid was Hawaiian language imbued within this movie, right? There's so many fun plays on Elvis and just like the lifestyle in Hawaii, which I had also grown up in. But like I remember Disney doing a specific special on the Kamehameha schools, and they had a group of their choir sing it on like national television, and they helped to teach us the Hawaiian words to the song. That by the time I went to go see it as a kid, I could sing along in the theater, and I just felt so empowered and seen as a Pacifica kid, knowing that a project like this was being made by Disney.
Yeah. Do you remember singing in theaters, Vi, or?
Absolutely not. She did not have the well-off ancestors.
She ain't have the $4.50?
She had you waited till it's on bootleg and sold at the laundromat, okay? 3 months later. That's what she had growing up. But we eventually made our way to watch it. And my first experience was a little different because not growing up home on the islands, not really witnessing or experiencing what that feels like, the movie gave me that. And at the time too, right, at the right age of however young I was, not having a reference to other kids who look like me, like Lilo's body, her build, like everything that she represented on that movie helped me feel seen, because previous to that, she was a Lizzie McGuire fan, and we know the vast differences between
Lizzie McGuire
and Lilo and Stitch, right? So I remember vividly just feeling like, oh my gosh, she has big hands like me, she has kinkles like me, like that.
She had a round someone or Pacifica nose like me.
Very a button nose to the T, yes.
Man, I think am I going to get canceled? I remember, I like it now when I watch it. I actually really enjoyed it. I watched it on the plane when I was flying where was I going to? To New York, actually. But I have to say, I was not impressed when I saw it the first time. But let me explain. This was the golden era of, Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, The Lion King. There's all big musicals. And let me just throw in the disclaimer. I know there are problematic aspects to all of those films. Maybe not The Lion King. I think the rest were more problematic than The Lion King. But anyway, I was expecting to see this musical with like extravagant numbers and all the razzle dazzle. And when it didn't give me that, I was over it. Count me out. This is not a movie I'm coming back to see. So that was literally the only time I saw it was 2003. And then on the plane, and I will say, I watched the new version and I enjoyed it. We were at the premiere. Me and Donato went to the premiere. And then it made me go back and watch the cartoon, and I really enjoyed the cartoon. Yeah. So
the second time around,
heard, Crit. But
yeah.
I also want to push back on this thought, right? Because yes, Disney has this full lexicon of animated films that are done like in musical style and all of that jazz. One thing that I'm sitting with and thinking about projects like Lilo and Stitch, Moana 2, that have centered Pacifica people are the relationships that are at the foundation of that, which have been community and family and sisterhood. I'm just in awe of that for our people, that someone like Lilo and Nani's character specifically didn't need to be saved by a man to feel empowered or find closeness and community with each other. I mean, granted, there's an alien dog, but
Wait, but
like
I don't. No, I get all the values and I love all of that. It's just my gay ass was looking for a song. I wanted a musical, and you weren't giving me that. Like I want the Lion King, so I was just like, wow, like where's the songs? You know, because I had those expectations in my head, and when I didn't get them, I was like. Ugh. But you know, of course, if I'd watched it again, my expectations had been thrown out the window. Having watched it, I think I would have been able to actually appreciate it for what it was. But because it wasn't giving music, I was like, I'm good. Let me go back and watch The Lion King again, which I've watched that movie like a million times. Lilo Stitch, I would say well, we'll get into the reasons why I don't like it and why I might not actually be pulled to watch it in the same way I would other Disney films. Again, going back to The Lion King, that's probably my all-time favorite Disney film. But yeah, but we did go to the premiere, me and Donato.
How'd
So
that go?
okay, so this was the most extravagant Hollywood premiere I've yet to go to. Right. From the moment that we walked in, first of all, it was at the El Capitan Theater in Hollywood, which is like an iconic venue. Just going through the main tent entrance into all of the activations, like I was just so wowed. And one of the first vendors that we run into, of course, is Hawaiian Airlines, where like they're giving you lei, and it just felt really special. And I was like, okay, hey fam, look at us, we made it. And we had a phenomenal team with us. Of course, we had Crit there. We had Benjamin Pola, who was helping us run tech, and my co-host on the red carpet, which is our young co-host Manalani, um, and who is also Pacifica, Native Hawaiian, and just seeing through her lens, right?
mm,
Like that she's getting to experience Lilo and Stitch, this version come out during her generation, meant so much to me as as an elder to her, right? And like I'm like, you are reliving in a grander way the experience that, you know, is so special in my heart, right? Like I got to go to the Nu'uli cinemas. You're getting to go to the El Capitan like theater, and like we get to do this together. And working the red carpet was really fun. We got to talk to so much of the cast and members of the crew, and also see like a slew of other Pacifica folks working in media entertainment on the carpet. And it's always so special for me because friends have told me that also work in the industry, and is like anytime we see you on the other side of the carpet means so much to us because you ask certain questions, you know, just uniquely and differently, right, as it pertains to our culture, the nuances of our identities. And it makes me feel so good that other people, you know, feel empowered in those ways. um, Great, we were alongside a number of larger media outlets, right? Like ABC, Blase Blase, you know, if they're recognizable, you would know them. They were all there. And we didn't, at least from like my perspective, it wasn't clear to me that any other folks behind the carpet were Pacific Islander descent.
yeah. And can I just say, we get the best content. We are having the most fun. Like I'm thinking back to Moana 2 and then this one, you can see the way that the talent respond. When you look at like Courtney B. Vance and Zach, I'll let you say his last name because I know you're really good at it, Donato.
Zach Galifianakis.
Yep, there we go. That one. Like they are having a great time talking to Donato and talking to Manalani. You can just see that they light up in a different way than they are talking to the rest of the carpet. That's I'm gonna toot my own horn. I really do believe that we really put out the best content. But anyway, I will say to your point, Donato, at both Moana and at Lilo and Stitch, I would argue we're one of maybe two or three, if not the only Pacifica people who are on the carpet, you know, from the outlets and that. Um, yeah. But shout out to Disney for always making space for us to be there and looking after us. Like they team always make sure that they come around to be like, hey, are you guys all right? They text and call me and stuff. So I do appreciate that. Yeah. I don't know. Vi, have you got anything to try? I know you wasn't there, sorry, but
She was not on no red carpets with Hawaiian Airlines, okay? But she was living for the content that came from that. We'll say that. I love that for y'all, especially too. I mean, just all jokes aside, I think part of that experience of getting excited like other people is because they also see the reflection and the visibility, not
Yeah.
only in the film, but in the aftermath of the film coming out.
Mm.
And y'all know me, media is not my thing, but I know the power of seeing, folks who are aligned with the art that's coming out or being produced and how important that is. So shout out to
Hmm.
y'all for representing.
Oh, yes, totally. And I also want to name there was a family reunion moment that happened that I was completely oblivious to. So I don't know if y'all know this, and I don't know if he'll ever hear this, but according to my mom, Iam Tongi is like my second cousin.
Oh.
And my mom had told me this years ago. I completely forgot about it. And after I posted the video with Iam Tongi, my mom's throwing shade on social media. She reshared my video and she's basically saying in Tongan, look, they're cousins and they don't even know it.
Oi.
It's like we're behaving like strangers, but like, of course, we're giving each other respect. We're having a great time.
Yeah.
But had it registered in my brain, I would have been like, yo, dude, so we related. We're fam, like fam,
Let's
fam.
talk about this lineage, huh?
I know.
How Pacifica people are. Anytime
Right.
someone gets some semblance of visibility, everyone's all trying to deconstruct
Everybody
how it is
family.
that we're
Yep.
related. I mean, yes, in the club we're all fam, but we work twice as hard to determine what that connection is when, someone gets some visibility. So
Mm.
Right. So let's talk about the 2025 version in particular. Let's
Mhm.
start with what we liked about it.
I think for me, I really like that there was representation of what our stories do to our nervous systems. Just looking at it as a therapist, but also just as a Pacifica person, like that piece is so important, and I think that was centered, like the stories of how it impacts our children, our
Mm.
ancestral memories. There's a lot of like heart wrenching moments where I think just again zooming out, it's a beautiful lens for younger generation to see, and then to kind of walk through the different levels or waves of the emotions that Lilo and Stitch and Nani go through. um, that's my clinical lens.
I mean, first off, I have to like give her flowers. Maya Kealoha, such a
Yeah.
brilliant young actress. Like the way that she embodied not only just this character, but literally, like, I feel like the spirit and essence of Aloha through and through the film. I mean, it was such a joy to see. From an actor's lens, I imagine how difficult it must be um, to work across a digital component doll, right? Like until they can factor in the voice and all of that, do the CGI that they need to create for Stitch's character. Like you're just, it's almost acting like one sided to this inanimate object, right? Sure, it'll move and do certain things, but like to carry that emotional um, um, arc through and through, scene by scene, as a young emerging actress, like wow, what an experience, what an experience that must have been for her. I'm so excited where the future is going to continue to go with her. Furthermore, I will say this, I love the character that Amy Hill plays, who is the tutu,
Yes.
right? The
Mm.
fact that they layered in this type of relationship into this film meant so much because growing up in the islands, we can all identify either the auntie or the tutu next door that is not just um, any one person's auntie or tutu, it's all of our tutu and all of
Mm.
our auntie. So I really appreciated that aspect of it, and seeing Tia Carrere come back and be
Oh
part of
yeah.
this project as the social worker was just
Mm.
so, so special. And of course, Chris Sanders reviving his role as Stitch as well. After 23 years for these two actors to come back, it must have been, I can only imagine what it would be like to work on a project and then it gets a revival 23 years later, and getting a call to be like, come back, we want you to be part of this. So
Wait, who was on the original one? Amy Hill or Tia Career?
Tia Carrere was the voice of Nani. So for those of you who don't
Oh
know,
snap!
Oh, I had
the
no idea.
iconic actress Tia Carrere,
Listen, I
who
love me
plays
some
the
True
social
Lies.
worker in the Lilo and Stitch film, she was actually the voice of Nani in the original Lilo and
Yeah.
Stitch.
Mm.
Yo, so I want to say two things. One is with Maya, I loved her. I thought she did so great. But you know how you're talking about how she carried the film and how she's basically acting opposite a ball or whatever inanimate object, right?
Mm-hmm.
But like I think that speaks to you know, again, like kids have free imaginations, you know, like they can really
Mm.
play like that. And it's as we get older and you know we become more disillusioned by little things, you know, we're told to stop dreaming and all these things like that. You know, we don't necessarily have the freedom to explore that kind of fun in the same ways, right? And
Yeah.
so, you know what it made me think of, Donato, as you're talking about that? It made me think of E.T. and Elliot. That's it.
Mm.
Yeah, the way that Elliot is just, you know, just loving on ET and just emotional and just very invested, right?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, the other thing that I wanted to say was to do with Tia Carrere and how she was a social worker, and she basically tells Nani that you can't live with Lilo anymore. Like you're just not taking good enough care of her. And she says to her, you know, we don't say goodbye, we say ahui aho, which means, you know, see you soon. And I was just like, oh, like, you know, that hit me like really hard just listening to that. But
Yeah.
I loved again Maya's performance. I really liked Kaipo Dudois. I hope I'm saying his name right. We got to meet him on the carpet. I think he's a great actor. And
Mm-hmm.
I had seen him in My Partner, which was a boy love story set in Hawaii, and I thought he was really good in that. And so to see him play like more of a comedic role, that was pretty cool. And also, I like the fact that they had him and Maya who look like us, you know, because quite often when we
Mm.
see, you know, Hawaiians, there's so many mixed Hawaiians out there, right? But it's not often that we get to see like the browner kind of, you know, like Hawaiians who look like Polynesians from other islands, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's just not at the forefront. You don't often get to see them presented in that way. So I did really enjoy that too. Um, and I thought that the comedic timing of Courtney B. Vance and the other aliens, I thought they were really great too.
Yeah. And going back even to like the moment with the social worker. First of all, the fact that the social worker was also represented as a Hawaiian social worker or just an
Mm,
indigenous social worker is a for me a really big cue because I mean not only is that the reality of the life we live right now, but I mean the fact that there was someone who looked like her to walk her through such a very hard time. Like I'm speaking more specifically around the time where there's a moment in the film. I think it's when Cobra Bubbles. Is
yeah,
that
yeah.
the
Yeah,
the
Courtney B.
name?
Vance, yeah.
Okay. This funny how y'all know the actors like name and I
But
know
not the
them by their
character names, right?
No, totally. That's fine.
but like after there's a moment where Nani feels really overwhelmed and she breaks down like right when the doors close she cries and as a therapist I oftentimes see that unseen labor of older sisters of aunties and
Mm,
daughters of Pacifica people who are expected to hold this family together with very little support or very little regulation because if we're going to be honest Nani isn't failing, she's surviving the system that was never meant to care for indigenous families. That's the
mm,
one piece that I was like, oh, yes. I didn't really like that the ending where Lilo was taken, just because the trauma behind that and it being done by a Pacifica social worker. That's my own shit. But the fact that there was representation of that pain in this system that is truly oppressing
mm.
indigenous families and not supporting her, I was like, yeah, y'all told the truth there.
I see. On the other hand, I saw that as a positive, right? Because I was like, oh, you know, the system's fucked, right? But
Yeah,
we have a Kanaka social worker who's doing what she can within the system, right? And she's like, you know
yeah,
what? Because say it wasn't a Kanaka social worker, they might have fucking tossed Lila to the wolves, you know? So I was like, she's
true.
making sure that she's being placed with family and someone who loves her and knows her and is across the street, you know? Because I mean,
Mm-hmm.
let's face it, like Nani could not take care of her, right? And also,
Yeah,
how could Nani pursue her own dreams if she's looking after her little sister? So
right.
I was like, at least you've got someone on your side who's like fighting for you and trying to like you could tell the social worker actually cared about her. Where That's not always the case. Not no disrespect to social workers out there, but there are a lot of people in the system who are collecting a check and aren't really invested in the communities that they work for. And that's not what you get with this particular social worker. But, again, gosh, this is the other thing, right? It's like, is this propaganda? And I'm not saying this is about police, but like, is this painting a certain picture of the welfare system, kind of just gloss over all the troubles and issues with it? But yeah, that's kind of what I took away from it. Oh, thank God she's going with this character here. But in saying that, sorry, this is a whole nother tangent. I remember I saw on I think it was a TikTok video, where how they kept mixing up what Nani was studying, and they're like, she's studying marine biology, but they're like, oh yeah, she's joining the Marines, and then they're like, yo, in order for any movie to be able to mention the Marines or the Army or whatever, they have to get permission, right? So this was like, this is all that is actual propaganda, like they actually.
I had no idea.
Yeah, like they are. That was no mistake that they kept slipping that in a couple of times. It's just a very and I don't even want to say subtle, but it's a insidious way to kind of sneak in like these ideas of join the military. So
comment on this. I want to comment on this because I think it's brilliant, and here's why. It highlights in a way a lot of what Pacifica people how limited their options feel. And here's what I mean by that, right? We have a place like Hawaii who has historically been disenfranchised by its own land, has also become a place where the US has funneled so much resources to militarize and further disfranchise its own people from, and create pathways for them to support the military, right? So I think it's a unique perspective that unless you're like from there or understand the history, you might miss the significance of those very limited options. If that makes sense.
No, it makes sense, but I would argue that it's not a social commentary on, the only way out of poverty for a lot of people is the military. I don't think it was that at all, because they would make more commentary on it, right? Like if there was a specific point they were going to make, for me, I think they'd be a lot more intentional in being like, oh man, like, because Nani and Lilo were living in poverty, right? And they didn't really talk about the military like, oh, I have to join this, so that I can support you, Lilo. Like if it was something along those lines, I think that would be a more intentional criticism of the military freaking, industrial complex.
Yeah.
But I think it just goes back to like this country in particular is so insidious, the ways that they slide in the messaging around the military. And again, it goes back to the military wouldn't give permission for them to talk about the Marines in that sense, right? I don't think they would give them permission.
And that's probably why a case that you're naming is probably a scenario in which they wouldn't. And this is just me like making an assumption, right? If you were going to in some way kind of bash the military by using their name, they would likely not give you the license to use their name. Right? So I think it's part of like the responsibility of us that are working along the fringes in this type of media format to call the thing, right?
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, we had people that have consulted on this film that are Indigenous Native Hawaiian communities, right? We had the screenwriter himself, Chris Bright, who I'm sure understands that history. He may not be able to name it publicly, and this is just my assumption, right? But like, we can name that thing and be like, y'all, let's think about this more deeper and why it was probably framed and plugged that way. It might easily miss any other person, but like, we can be like, yo, this is what's up.
But
and that's the thing.
I think I'll push back on that because, again, this is a movie that's going out internationally, right? And so talking about their responsibility again, if you're going to slide this in as a joke on the commentary on, as some shade, I still think there's a more clever way to do it. It just feels like the intention is to plant seeds in people all across, because the audience is wider than Hawaii, right? This is a industry about making money at the end of the day, and look how much money this country spends on the military, like all those things, right? I'm always going to err on the side of like this is going back to the system of Hollywood itself. I feel like this kind of falls more in line with that because you see films that have more direct criticisms of the military and that, and they just do it in a yeah. I don't know. What are your thoughts, Vi?
I'm just thinking, like, specifically as a Samoan therapist, I understand how much is encoded in like small acts. And if we look at this film, I have this perspective that when those things are stripped away for like a cinematic simplicity, we really lose the medicine of a story.
Mm,
And like the lines get pretty blurred when we're talking about things like this, when we're looking at another moment where I think it's Lilo goes to the ocean at some point. She has a breakdown and she's feeling really alone. Like after a fight with Nani,
yeah.
and from a therapeutic lens, this moment really captures like a child's silent cry for help. In my head, there's an attachment rupture made physical. So Lilo doesn't have the words to name abandonment, but she seeks the ocean's embrace to feel held. That's what I
Mm,
mean by like the medicine in these stories. And we know as Pacifica people that ocean is womb, it's witness, right? That's where we are navigating grief in homes disrupted by loss, incarceration, immigration raids. Like this kind of emotion expression is often punished or minimized and dismissed. I
mm.
just wish that the film had lingered longer in the silence of those things, or even just like the military aspect, so we could feel, I guess, a little more connected to the experience. Very
Yeah,
long winded version, but that's my perspective.
no, and I
Respect.
think yeah, and I think Donato, to your point, right? I think because we don't have many representations, like we don't have another film that Chris Bright's done before, to this extent that we can't really look at themes. We can't compare to like, oh, what has he done in the past to kind of look at how he's kind of talked about this. So because there's so few Pacifica films out there, we don't have a track record to be able to look at. We don't have I guess just a decent sample.
The receipts.
Yeah.
Totally
Like,
fair. Totally
so
fair.
it's really hard to make any calls, right? And make like to build a case for either side, right? Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. One thing I was thinking about when I left the film, granted, I had seen a bunch of TikToks before the film, and I was like, shit, I really didn't want that to skew my perspective going in. But I really left the theater thinking, what would it look like if other Pacifica healers, therapists, or elders were invited into the writer's room?
Mm.
Just because what's at stake isn't just a movie, it's memory, it's legacy, and it's also the right to see ourselves as whole. And there are so many moments that I feel like were missed culturally. Granted, I'm Samoan, I'm not Hawaiian, right? But I think it was easy to just recognize that there were some moments where it fell short. And that was very much so in alignment with the TikToks that I seen. And I was like, shit, like I
Hmm.
can confirm that is my experience after watching it too. So I kind of just wish there was, I guess, intentionality in the writer's room if there wasn't
Well,
already. I don't
typically for
know.
films, they won't have a writers' room. That's more for like TV shows. But they
Ah,
definitely had a Oceanic Cultural Trust present in this. Well,
okay.
sorry, sorry. Let me rephrase that. They had an Oceanic Cultural Trust for Moana 2, but they kind of emulated that for this film too. So they had like Laina.
And Kaliko Lehua Hurley was also working on this project as well.
Mm. I wish that our healing journeys as Indigenous people were to be rooted in not in assimilation, but in remembrance, because a lot of things that I was picking up on seemed like Lilo and Nani and Stitch were trying to assimilate in certain systems. And I don't know that that's a true reflection of Hawaii, of being of it or rather than in it kind of thing. So
Yeah. What do you mean by that, Vi?
like not just for aesthetics, but in full humanity, like in grief, in rage, in softness, and in joy, like seeing that as part of their healing experience versus I think there were moments where it was kind of stripped.
Mm.
Like for example, there's a scene where I feel like Stitch comes off as like they are being created to seek harm, or they
Like to
cause a lot of
destroy.
yeah, like to
Yeah.
destroy. And for me, it echoes the stories of so many queer, trans, neurodivergent Pacifica people, or even
Mm.
our
Mm.
young generation who are labeled as destructive when in reality they're looking for safety. they're not
Yeah.
just violent, they're dysregulated, they're scared, they're trying to figure out if belonging is even possible because they're different. And so the scene becomes like a metaphor for what it means to be created in a space of harm, which I translate to like assimilating, not
Yeah.
in acceptance.
Ooh, ooh, that's deep.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's deep. And you know what? It also makes me think about the many people that find somewhat like healing and restoration when they spend enough time in the islands, girl. You know
Mm.
what I mean?
I think that's exactly it, Donato. Like,
Mhm.
Stitch was created to destroy and wreak havoc. Like, that was his thing, right? And then I think the fact that he landed in Hawaii, of all places, and he found himself connected with Lilo, of all people, I think that speaks to her aloha and just the way that she just wrapped herself around him. And no matter what he was doing, she loved him. And I think that's what made him shift. You can actually say he was created to destroy. Like, his creator was like, I've invented this alien to seek out and freaking just wreak havoc. And then Lilo's the opposite of that, right? And so that's why there was
Yeah.
that balance, and they balanced each other out. So
Mhm.
yeah, I thought it was a really sweet story. I never used to find Stitch cute, and I think because I had that preconceived, because I had my expectations, it didn't meet them because it wasn't a musical. But when I went back and watched it, I was like, actually, Stitch is cute. Like, the voice doesn't annoy me like it used to.
Mhm. I really love in like the opening sequences how Lilo moves through the world. Like her character
Mm.
like is at these resorts just chilling. The whole staff knows who she is. They're specifically like, Lilo, like what are you doing back in the pool? And she's just like, girl, this is my land.
Okay.
What are you
I
doing?
belong
What are
here.
you
What are
doing
you
in
doing
my
here?
pool? I just thought that was like a really beautiful, soft moment too of like signaling. Much of the conversation, recently, just as it comes to Hawaii, is how we pimp out Hawaii to tourism,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
And how that harm displaces families like Lilo and Nani's. In thinking just deeper about, the relationship to like social services that we see in the film is so many kids in like the foster system end up either as a result of substance abuse and things of that nature in Hawaii, or economic disparity. And I guess maybe I'm repeating what y'all were saying earlier, just seeing the level of care that was displayed from the social worker perspective, as someone that also shares the cultural background, right?
Yeah,
Yo,
and that theme, like
Mm-hmm.
just, I mean, the ohana that we fight for, like that theme is throughout the film. That
mm,
family is chosen, it's fought for, and it's messy. Like that
Mm-hmm.
still lands very true.
yeah,
And I think as someone who helps people rebuild their internal sense of like safety and belonging, I appreciate how the film was very clear that love doesn't have to be perfect to be healing. Like it doesn't
yep.
Yeah.
have to be a certain way, even when Lilo and Stitch both feel like outsiders, like that resonates pretty deep for a lot of, I think, our Pacifica youth.
For me, it just reinforces the idea that true love is unconditional. I think
Mm,
that's what it is
yep.
for me. Like, you can not like someone, and this is my thing. I'll be like, I might not fucking like you right now, but I'll always love you. Like, that doesn't die.
Yeah.
I might not fucking want to be anywhere near you for the rest of my life, but I still love you. Let's talk about gripes.
Yes. One of my gripes is the character of Myrtle. And if y'all don't remember who Myrtle is, she is the girl in Lilo's Halal that leads bullying her. And in the
Yep.
cartoon, I loved hating Myrtle.
Yeah.
Because for me, it was like, not this white presenting redhead bullying Lilo, who is Hawaiian,
Right.
obviously, but like what they did in the live adaptation was they made her look more Pacific Islander.
I just
And
think
so
that
it kind
yeah,
of like for me, like
Yeah.
watered down the
yeah,
impact of what that bullying felt like.
yeah.
And that's okay.
Mm.
And that's okay. Like maybe it just made it seem more safer for and protective of Maya in that sense. Maybe I don't know what the thought was behind it, but I did like having a gripe with little redheaded Myrtle, and we didn't get that.
Totally, because that's real social commentary, right? So when you do water it down, it doesn't have the same impact. So I definitely, I agree. I don't, again, because Hawaiians are so mixed, it's really hard to tell sometimes, oh, like, they're more Asian presenting or, they're more white presenting. It's really like,
Mhm.
I think it was definitely more clear in the animated version, right?
Yeah, of the
Mm.
colorism, and the effects of
Yeah.
that can happen even within Pacifica communities, right? Like again, it's not clear to me if Myrtle is Kanaka, but because she
Mm,
looks a certain way and the way
yeah.
that she bullies Lilo, um, felt so much more real to me with that understanding. That sometimes, or what do they say? Not all kinfolk are.
All skin folk are kinfolk.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have others too. Like they could have I don't know, dragified Peakley up more. Like I would have been so there for the campiest version of Peakley. And of course we lost Gantu. Also, shit, I forget the name of the character, but the Empress lady. The
Oh,
Empress, I'm
yeah.
gonna call her Empress Alien. The voice actor
Oh
that
yeah.
voices her, Hannah Waddingham, I'm just in love with. I would have just loved to see more of her.
Mm. I thought the character
Yeah.
was great. Yeah. I got two massive gripes. One is the Elvis worship. I fucking hate the fact that in the original, Elvis plays such a huge role. And, it's realistic. There are a lot of Islanders who do love Elvis and consider him the king of rock or whatever, right? But for
Hmm.
me, he just represents something very ugly, going back to colonization. I'm like, how can you make such a strong commentary about colonization and then you have fucking Elvis sitting right there being sung throughout, I feel like that kind of takes away from the message. And again, Elvis Elvis represents the military in a lot of ways too, right? Like he was a soldier. A lot of his films, he's playing the soldier. I don't know if it was the army or what, but I don't know. There's something just doesn't sit right to me in the original. And then in this one, Elvis's music it wasn't as present, but it was still there. And I was like, man, they could have done without it. Like they really had no reason to keep that in there. I don't know. I'm just not a fan of Elvis and what he represents as a white man who also, when you think of the early Pacifica representation, Blue Hawaii, for instance, that's him literally in Hawaii, and all the Hawaiians are in the background. So that's one of my biggest gripes. The other one is, of course, Sydney, who played Nani. She just didn't cut it for me. Like, when we're talking about imagination and the
Mm-hmm.
way that Maya just really, she just really shone throughout. Sydney's performance for me wasn't believable. And someone who has siblings and younger cousins and just friends and family who I'm very protective over, she was not giving me that fierce protection at all. When I watched it, I was like, this isn't believable that this is your sister who's about to get taken away. I just wasn't feeling it. And for me, the controversy around Sydney's casting as someone who didn't come out and say I'm Native Hawaiian, and so the assumption there is she's not Native Hawaiian, right? These
Hmm.
things have a way of working themselves out, and it's like, yo, this role wasn't meant for you. Like you could have done without this role because how much has it really done for you? Because you were not good in it. Sorry, that's my
Mm.
opinion. For the cast, she was definitely the weakest link. I feel like the rest of the cast was excellent. And oh god, remember at the end when she's patting Stitch? Like you can literally, she's just like it
Yeah.
looks like she's doing it to like thin air. Girl, this is indicative of just the whole situation to me. So let me stop there. Because I mean, and I said this to Donato when we were doing the interviews, I was like, she's young. I don't want to feel like we're bullying her. Like if she comes, we can interview her, but we don't have to. I don't want her to feel isolated because of us. But just given
Yeah,
everything that's happened, I just didn't want to highlight that whole situation there.
totally. Yeah, but what are your thoughts? I was noticing some visceral reactions, so I'm
The
curious to
visceral reaction.
hear.
So okay, I'm going to say one of my first gripes was around Nani's colorism. Just because my shock of like one, we know colorism remains a painful wound in like Pacifica communities. And Nani
Mm-hmm.
originally draws as a dark skinned, strong featured Native Hawaiian woman.
And
Mm-hmm.
thick,
Hello,
and
okay, I was coming for that. I was coming for the build. And so to my surprise, when I, the live action starts and I see complete opposite. Like literally it felt like complete opposite. This is a lighter skinned actor who didn't hold the same features or the presence as the original. I felt like that was reinforcing colonial beauty standards. And
Mm.
not only that, but it erases the very bodies we're fighting to be seen on screen.
Yeah.
I say that as more of a thicker plus size Samoan woman. Like it would be different if it was reversed. But the fact that all we know is Nani as a darker, Native Hawaiian woman where she has these big, strong, beautiful features, and then to come on screen and you see something so different, I think I just was like, the impact of colorism on our young girls daily is very
Yeah.
heavy. And this could have been a chance to affirm them instead of it becoming like a missed moment. Not to
Mm-hmm.
mention the icing on the cake for me was like, damn, I really didn't feel like she delivered nearly as compassionate or well lived as like even just the original film. Like just looking
Mm-hmm.
at the cartoon version.
Because it's not her
Yeah.
experience, right? That
Yeah.
isn't her experience being a thicker, darker
Yeah.
skinned woman
Yeah.
in Hawaii. Yeah. And her
Mm-hmm.
fucking pronunciation was horrible. I'm not even Kanaka, but I was like, what the fuck? Did she just say Kuleana? Like, I was like, you grew up in Hawaii. How is your pronunciation so awful? And when they had her singing, I was looking at Manalani who was next to me, and I was like, and even Ben, who's Samoan too, right? I was like, yo, are you
Mm-hmm.
fucking for real? Like, this is terrible.
Yeah.
Listen, yeah, I mean, the other thing that I was viscerally reacting to when Crit was talking, was not even about like Nani. It just gave me a thought about how Cobra Bubbles. There was a point where I felt like he was more of like a quirky character, and I'm like, no, he is a symbol of state control. Like, can we
Mm.
not? Again,
Mm-hmm.
that's my social worker mindset coming into play. Like, hey, this is child welfare surveillance. This is tourism field gentrification. This is trauma of economic displacement. Like, he is a
Mm.
part of that system. He is not fun and friendly. Like, please don't get it fucked up. And for me, like, that framing can be so dangerous because it makes it seem easier to forget that indigenous and immigrant families are disproportionately torn apart by these same systems.
Mm-hmm.
Bro, that's what I'm saying. That's why I'm like, on one hand, Tia Karere, because they are truly some of our people who really are fighting, doing the best they can in these systems. But it can trick you into thinking this is what social services is and this is what they're built
Yeah.
to do. And it's like, no, that's not what in this fucking country. Look at what's happening.
No,
This is not what it's about. So yeah,
absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I
And
agree.
Nani isn't just a struggling sister. She's a young woman. She's navigating intergenerational trauma with no
Mhm.
safety net.
Wait, we didn't even talk about the fact their parents are dead. Like what?
Hello?
Yeah.
Like, and the truth was so softened to make it digestible, and in doing
Yeah,
so, I that's what I mean by like the radical honesty of some of this was lost. But that's just my gripe thinking about like sanitizing systemic harm. That shit
yeah.
is real life,
Mm-hmm.
and I see that day to day. So that was one thing I walked away like, ugh, that's irritating. Cobra Bubbles is not,
Mm-hmm.
he is not on our side.
Yeah. I mean, when yes, yes, and to all of the sentiments, yes, and to all of the gripes. I think bringing it back to the fact that this project is created for a younger audience, which, as much as we would love to have all these deeper, nuanced layers of these issues at play because they are important and necessary, I feel like oftentimes get lost in productions like these. I do want to say, with the controversy surrounding Sydney and the impacts of what I can only imagine she might be going through right now, I do want to offer some grace. I hope this young lady is doing okay. I can't imagine all of the vitriol that she must be experiencing as a result of so many opinions, right? Valid and judgmental must be really hard. And as a young actor growing in this industry, I trust and believe that, or it is my hope, that she'll carry much more thoughtfulness, integrity, right? To get to a position in your career in this type of industry, to have power to say no to an opportunity is huge, right?
Sure.
And
Yeah.
maybe she didn't feel that at that moment, but like also, who knows what the choices were in her life? I don't know. I don't know her personally. I can only imagine with everything that's been going on how tough that must be.
My thing is,
100%.
the community came out strong,
Mm-hmm.
you had the opportunity to stand down. And again, I don't ever condone anyone being bullied to the point it impacts their mental health negatively,
Yeah.
especially if it leads to self harm. But like we have to hold these people accountable. Otherwise nothing's going to change. Like there has to be a degree of pushing back, and sometimes people's feelings are going to get hurt. And for me, it's like, girl, you're not even a Pacific Islander. Like I would have a bit more grace if it was a Pacifica person of a different ethnicity. That's where I'm like, okay, I don't necessarily agree with them taking up this role as a Hawaiian, but let's talk about it, right? But the
Yeah.
fact that I'm just like, no, like that wasn't your role to take. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and yes, I understand she's a young actress, and I'm not gonna sit here and lie and say I haven't considered taking an opportunity that wasn't specifically for a Samoan, right? But I think my ass is old. I'm 40. Like I have a lot less patience for bullshit.
Yeah.
And I think just in this day and age, right? These kids know better. They're in a generation now where they have access to information, so I have less grace to offer.
Mm-hmm.
I for sure have a lot of compassion and empathy, to offer anyone who puts themselves on such a global platform. I think as we're talking about these gripes, it's not necessarily to personalize it, but we do have to recognize that these are real people, and that pushback or that controversial impact comes their way. And so to your note, sis, I definitely hope too that she's also supported by Disney with the support that she needs, behind some of this.
The decision wasn't hers alone. Like it passed through several people. So yeah,
Right.
I agree.
Yeah. And it's not just about like the fidelity to the original film. This, I think, grand scheme of our conversation too, is just it's about how stories shape the way we see ourselves, our children see ourselves, and future generations. And we know that like storytelling is medicine, and when it's diluted, erased, or misrepresented, it has consequences. Not to endorse harm to anyone, but unfortunately, it does lose its radical act of remembering who we are in those kind of aspects. So of course, sending her so much love and light, and I hope that Disney is paying that therapy bill that she rightfully deserves access to.
Period. That was a word, sis. And I also hope her team can like manage through this more effectively and smarter. Like the fact that there's been very little to no direct response.
That's troubling.
Have y'all just been like from the get-go admit and say like, I am not Kanaka, but I'm embodying this role and I'm excited to like bring in, members and like people to help inform, and I'm gonna, work closely with this person or that person. Like that would have really softened it. But the fact that they've just ghosted people on this, like, is not good.
No, seriously. The fact that the casting happened and then the movie didn't come out till so much later, like you had this whole time to prepare, and you didn't come up with nothing. Like not a single statement. By not saying anything, it's very much an admission of guilt, right? And it's like, yeah, this ain't it. But anyway, that whole topic has been done to death on Twitter and X or whatever y'all want to call it, the internets. But overall, I did enjoy the film, I will say. So, Lupe, any last words on the Lilo and Stitch experience?
I think it was great. I appreciate that it exists. And in a time where our Pacifica and queer youth are targeted and being displaced and criminalized, I think this is a subtle invitation to reimagine what home and care can look like. I would also say for Pacifica youth watching, especially those who relate to feeling like Stitch, I hope that they see being different doesn't mean being unlovable. It just means that your story hasn't been held in a way that it deserves yet. And I love that I can reference that message to this film. So I'm still very grateful, that we have that as just a point of care for our future generations.
Ooh, this is a good one, yo. Go ahead, man.
Girl, you should close us out every time.
Yes.
You always drop in the word.
All right, fam. Well, thank you all for listening, and we'll see you next time. Bye, hoes.
Bye.
This podcast is brought to you by our friends at Utopia Portland and Utopia Washington.
Okay.
Thank you for listening.